was a senior in high school when I discovered a quaint little game called Vintage Story, a whole 6 years ago. The game on the surface looks a lot like that other block game. What was it called again? Oh yeah, Cube World. But it goes so much deeper than you might think. This isn't just a blocky survival game that happens to make you feel like the guy in those primitive survival videos who is way too good at creating fire with sticks. Bro, how is it harder in the game than when he does it? Vintage Story actually has a story, and a fascinating one at that. It's inherently mysterious, and today we're gonna crack the code on the whole thing. What created the temporal rifts that always seem to appear right outside your freaking base? Why are you different shades of blue when the NPCs in the world seem to be human? And why does everybody call this guy Dave? These are just some of the questions that I'll be answering. Yes, the game's not finished, but a good amount of its foundational story is out now with the recent 1.20 update. So without further ado, and without wasting any of your time, give this video a like, and let's get right into it. Allow me to set the stage. Vintage Story takes place on Earth, or more likely on a planet that is very similar to Earth. The story really begins as early as the late 13th or early 14th centuries, which as a reminder means between about the years 1275 and 1350. Now, just because the planet is Earth-like doesn't mean the historical figures of our world existed in Vintage Story. In that sense, it's like an alternate take on history where similar inventions and technology up to this point was invented, just perhaps not by the same people. There probably was no Socrates, Aristotle, or Plato, and if there were, perhaps their names were Bocrates, Arasparagus, or Bolo, as an example. I'm also inferring this since the game features nothing in the way of references to real historical figures. It's like a true alternate reality, but again with the same tech up to that point. And I say up to that point roughly 1300 because this is where stuff gets a little crazy. See, during this time, we zoom into somewhere in Europe, where a feudal lord named Lord Ingmar Falks had an estate known as House Falks. He also had a son named Jonas Falks, who is arguably the most important character in the lore for what he would go on to do. While his father was previously a mercenary who, due to his violent escapades, had gotten on the good side of the then emperor, Ingmar's son Jonas was quite the opposite. He was a curious boy who just wanted to understand the world and create things rather than destroy them like his father. And because his father was a lord, his estate had fiefdom, or in other words, control over a nearby village which happened to be the home of a young boy named Tobias. And Tobias was a tad bit angry at the Lord for how much he imposed over his village.
I stole into the Falks estate once, as a young man. I had intended to bring home a few pounds of our wheat and perhaps a handful of coins. The old Lord Falks mostly ignored our village in the shadow of his fiefdom, but he was a harsh, stringent man. Nevertheless, I intended to rob him.
Under the cover of night, Tobias snuck into the estate, but bumped into Jonas, the Lord's son. Tobias was horrified at first, but surprisingly, Jonas quickly came to see the intruding boy as an ally, since Jonas himself was also trying to avoid the cruelty of his father, instead wishing to spend time in the library where he could learn. Tobias and Jonas would go on to become friends, with Jonas teaching Tobias about writing, the arts, and philosophy, and Tobias helping Jonas learn about the world outside his estate, the natural forests and paths around the land. This friendship would go on to become a nearly unbreakable bond, but what happened not long after is what truly separates this world from our own, beyond the alternate history. After Jonas had effectively turned the estate library into his own kind of workshop, he went on to, by some miracle, create a device that changed everything. It was the catalyst for both the incredible inventions of the future and the window into what would become an unfathomably dangerous world. Jonas created what is simply known as... How Jonas Falks made the lens, we have no idea, but it is pivotal. This device allowed the user to peer through it and see into another dimension, another world, the Rust world. But see, calling it that at this point is misleading because at first when Jonas looked through the lens, it revealed a world that shone like gemstones. But because the lens was simply a window, Jonas couldn't exactly travel there. All he could do was watch, and watching gave him plenty to work with. In this world, he witnessed all kinds of strange creatures that were mechanical yet somehow almost alive.
Peer through and see the strange, inconceivable landscape. The towers, the sheer edges, the metallic, rumbling beasts shifting and moving like clockwork. From there, he stole inspiration. He learned how to use flux, how to simulate what he had seen, how to change the world.
Eventually, the old Lord Ingmar Falks died, and Jonas became the new lord, where his friendship with Tobias was no longer kept in secrecy. Tobias, his friend and now honored guest, became his assistant, and eventually the two rode for the nearby Cade Hill University, where Jonas intended to further study the sciences, and perhaps build upon the knowledge he was able to gain with the lens. Through Jonas's higher education, he went on to create things like the automaton locusts, which could assist with digging up materials for workers, among other handy tasks. He also invented the bell, this wormy little thing that could record audio, communicate, and make an ear-piercing sound that would drive anyone to the depths of insanity. Oh, fuck! Oh, no. Ah! What? I'm already a saw blade locust? Oh my god, he's yapping again. Shut the Its use case of this terrible sound was to help alert miners of cave-ins, reporting the danger. But Jonas even made beasts taller than men, like the Eidolon, a mobile colossus for scaffold and hoisting, which added to this roster of devices to help common workers. These mechanical tools were powered by something that Jonas eventually created, known as prima materia, which effectively turned Jonas and Tobias into sorcerers. Sir Jonas Falks was highly esteemed for this and considered one of the most important people of their time. This prima materia was seemingly the stuff that not only powered all of his sort of autonomous devices, but also it's kind of theorized that the prima materia powered the stuff in the Rust world as well. I mean, it was described initially as glowing like a gemstone. And what else do we know that also glows like gemstones? Stuff that has imbued the prima materia. So to recap, a scientist and his assistant create an incredible resource by copying what they see in another dimension and bring to life incredible, seemingly magical inventions. What could possibly go wrong, right? Rumors spread among the common people about crops dying, some kind of bad season on the horizon. And after enough complaints, these rumors turned into real news. A scholar by the name of Dmetri, who studied at the same university as Jonas, was sent to analyze the crops. The supposed blight was set to decimate the year's harvest, and on returning with the samples to the university, Dmetri was confounded by the problem. The black filth responsible for destroying crops was a complete anomaly.
It seems to spread regardless of condition. No procedure I have tried can halt it. I vacillate between fury and flight. How should I kill it? And what can I do to stop this? And all the same, what can I do? Can it be stopped? What dreadful scourge is this?
The black substance was eventually dubbed as rot and began infecting people and animals. It scoured over the land, enveloping and destroying anything in its path. According to the tapestry for rot, it left nothing behind, not harvest and not livestock, not arbor nor stream, not a child nor mother. When it came, you could only run and pray you did not see it again. Villages were destroyed, the people in them being displaced as refugees. What could be done? That was the question of the emperor, who had every scholar and otherwise intellectual person trying to solve the problem. While Dmetri did his work, Jonas too was called to find a solution of his own, of course being joined by Tobias.
I was there when he was told the news. I remember finding it strange when for a moment his face ran pale and he seemed to shake with fright. But there was nothing strange about that, I see now.
Jonas locked himself in his lab for months to accomplish the goal of some kind of solution. Dmetri had all but given up.
Put the beakers away, pull the tools from the walls. Look not to the plans of great ambition and great purpose. Take only your pen in hand and write your last words. Say farewell to those still here. Now, go and stand in the city. Stand in the hills and valleys. Stand and witness the end coming for us all.
But while many, like Dmetri had given up hope completely, at last, when an assembly was made for all the scientists and scholars to come forth and meet, presenting any solutions at the Diet of Kings, the room was silent. It seemed as if nothing could be done. Then Jonas stepped forward.
My lords, As I'm sure you're now aware of, we face a nightmarish threat. This disease, or plague, as it has been called, is not overly complex, neither is it beyond our vision. It is quite simply desolation made manifest.
His attendant began laying out a number of medical diagrams upon the floor. Master Falks issued from one parchment to the next, gesturing as he went.
It rots the body in its entirety. It begins externally with numbness and darkened skin. The victim may lose control of entire limbs. Eventually, the flesh sloughs off in small heaps. By this time, the victim has likely entered a cataleptic state. This may as well be a blessing for them. The rot will have overtaken their eyes and ears now, depriving them of their senses.
Arriving at the last parchment, he paused and gazed upon it. From the scribe's desk, it appeared only to be a drooping mass of charcoal smearings.
In its final stages, the rot consumes the mind and body whole, leaving nothing left of distinction. As for treatments, I have found none. Perhaps some of my betters from the academy have made progress, but judging by their silence, I think not. It is a certain death. However, I stand here now to offer you a better fate.
Jonas revealed to the court his schematics for what would be known as the Great Machine, and in exchange for building it, he presumably requested that all focus of the people of the region be aimed towards fulfilling that goal. Seeing no other option, the rulers agreed, and what happened next represented a gigantic shift in the attitudes and systems of the people themselves, with a few rather simplistic but distinct classes forming. The plan to build Jonas's great machine involved the construction being deep underground. It was presumably Jonas's band-aid solution to the gaping chest wound that was the rot. Being underground meant that it would take longer for the rot to reach them, but ultimately, it still wouldn't last forever. The underground civilization that thus developed around the project included hunters, those who hunted as much as they could on the surface for food before going underground with the others, clockmakers, technicians that were recruited en masse to aid the machine project, Blackguard, who became the sworn protectors and basically the police of the quickly developing underground network, the malefactor, who were basically wrongdoers sent to the surface to scavenge for anything useful in exchange for their re-entry back to safety, and tailors, who were just people who made clothes. All the classes I just mentioned happen to also be classes that you get to choose from yourself in the game when you make your character, but we'll get to you in a bit. The one class I didn't mention was the Commoner, and back during the construction of the Great Machine, this Commoner class represented most of the people, seemingly. While they lived in the quickly dug out underground tunnels for temporary safety from the rot, they were also, voluntarily or not, forced into the backbreaking manual labor to help dig and build, all of which for the purpose of the Great Machine. We don't know how long the construction took, but we have many stories from the people during this time, which you can find in-game, that, while not always significant to the plot, are always relevant to the world building of the game and often help give the perspective of the everyday people and what they went through. I'd love to explore some of these in cinematic detail in future videos because they're just incredibly written. Cinematic detail, you say? Wait, don't skip this. It's not a sponsorship. Well, okay, that guy over there is technically sponsoring the video. Is that even how this works? Can you just get to the point? Oh, right, yeah. You know these cinematics you've been seeing in the video, like the tapestries and the lens and stuff? I made this all in Unreal Engine 5 by porting over some of the Vintage Story assets, and I do it for all kinds of games. I'm bringing this up because I want to help you animate whatever you need. Whether you're a YouTube creator who wants to bring their video game characters to life for a sponsor segment to help actually entertain the viewer instead of having them skip. Hey, I see you mousing over. Wait, please. All right, he's talking too much. If you need anything, check out my website down below at trythebite.com. If you're a game dev, fellow content creator, or just need UE5, sequencer, and animation stuff for your project, I'd love to work with you. All right, now let's get back to the incredible Vintage Story. What wasn't incredible was the condition that people eventually were in. Food was running out. People were dying. Jonas couldn't help but realize the horrible depth to what he had started.
They dwell in filth and hunger. These men and women have no means of rubbish disposal. Many of them have already been stricken by rot. If any other soul should wander through their dwellings, they would tear him apart from the ligaments in search of food. And yet, they by some power withstand their hunger when they gaze upon me. They weep for joy and offer me what meager supplies they have. Oh God, please help me. I'm still your faithful servant.
Whether from terrible air quality, total exhaustion, or the rot slowly seeping in, it was only a matter of time before Tobias himself, Jonas's best friend, was infected with it. Jonas frantically sent Tobias to a location known as the Lazaret to wait out the disease as long as possible. And he did, as the black filth consumed him.
It slowly ate away my limbs. By the time I could scarcely see the dim candles of the sunlight through the shaft, I knew it had finally reached my head. All I could do was wait for death.
While Tobias was all but destined to die, Jonas hurriedly continued the work. The machine was almost done, and he wasn't the only one who knew it. Things were changing, too. These autonomous machines, like the golems and the bells and spiders and whatnot, were becoming unrecognizable. Jonas was starting to see things, the other world somehow beginning to leak through into theirs.
We had almost given up. Nobody spoke. We just desperately worked on the project. But now it's almost time to wake it, and the people are excited. They're too excited. They don't know. They don't understand. I don't even understand it. My creations, they are strange to me now. There is something wrong with them. A golem was found 2 shifts ago with blood splattered across its plates. The workmen, they wrote it off as an accident. But I know better.
And then it happened. An event we might describe as... If you thought this shit was insane before, well, it gets even weirder. See, when the Great Machine was finished and activated, it caused a gigantic earth-rumbling event. The ground shook violently, the world was twisted and changed, and in what may have been the blink of an eye, the rot was cleansed. All the people in close proximity to the device were ripped out of our world and lost beyond it. Anyone far enough away, such as Tobias, who was still rotting away in the Lazaret, wasn't taken, but their rot was cleansed just the same. For some reason, though, we don't really hear about any other people beyond Tobias. By this miracle, Tobias survived his bout with death, albeit left as half the man he was before, have his body eaten away forever.
I woke up in the dark. Everything dark, everything painful. Every breath in agony. I started crawling. I couldn't keep track of how long. Weeks, months maybe? All the tunnels had changed. I'd feel my way forward, finding dead end after dead end. Digging with my hands when I could. Hearing other things down there with me. Eventually, I found my way out. Everything changed. Green again. Brown and red and blue again. Life returned. I could finally look at myself. I was broken.
Why Tobias is the only survivor here, I'm not really sure. But the awakening scrambled the world around and appeared to mess with time itself, very likely taking the land back to what it geographically looked like or was composed of centuries before the rot even had happened, hence why it was completely purged. Oddly, not only was the land shifted around, but it appeared as if the people were too. When Tobias finally reached the surface of the world and took in all that had been restored, he eventually found humans that knew nothing of his time. They couldn't recognize his writing, and he had a strange accent compared to them. Being totally disfigured and unable to walk at first, Tobias traded knowledge to the people in exchange for shelter and protection. He would come to basically be the founder of a town called Nadia. It did not take long for Tobias to realize there was one more big change with this fresh start of a world. Not only did decrepit, rusty, and metallic creatures like the Drifters, Bowtorn, and Shivers appear during the harsh nights or in the depths of the earth, the land was prone to rifts that would open up temporally, leaking the monsters into our world. Temporal instability and storms came at times, thinning the barrier between our world and the Rust world, allowing monsters to roam freely, a catastrophic event which made the world ever more dangerous. But in spite of it all, Tobias, his group, and the many other brave souls of this new world survived as best as they could. As Tobias slowly regained his mind from the delirium that the rot had caused him in the past, he began to have thoughts about where the others from his time had gone. Was he the only one who was in this new yet old world? Where was Jonas? And if in fact the world had gone back in time, would there inevitably, with enough passage of time, be an event just like before where the rot would come into existence and once again eat away life itself? Tobias couldn't let it happen. In time, he became the village elder of Nadia and led the villagers on a new project with the ultimate goal of ripping a hole in the world with the use of Jonas's lens, in the hopes that he'd be able to bring back those that were lost. It was the best shot, he seemed to believe. The Nadians helped to construct a towering spire, and with or without their help, Tobias searched restlessly through the scattered wreckage and relics of that past yet twisted future until he found it. The lens. Setting the device on top of the completed tower, Tobias tore the hole.
A lifelong project for most. My companions and I built it over many years. Alas, many of them did not live to see it pierce the firmament. But that ruin is proof of their mettle. We succeeded in our task, and in doing so, forever destroyed that dear tower and the lands around it. Such is the cost of miracles.
The hole leaked the now decrepit, dark, and rusted world into ours, manifesting as a huge area of metal, debris, cogs, and rubble that spilled onto and inside the landscape, making the surrounding area unlivable for humans, but perfect for the creatures that flooded in. Because Nadia was relatively close to where the tower was built, the village suffered an onslaught of waves of attacks that had to be fended off, and, out of shame, Tobias left after ensuring they could handle the threats on their own. He would go on to be regarded as a pivotal figure for the town, where they built a statue for him in his honor. The man slinked off to his own cave, continuing his work in the hopes that one day his actions would have an effect, or at least a good one. Then he realized something while talking to his only friend, a small little bell that he named Charlemagne.
Look, you see that? Rubido is not limited to gold. The principle itself scales to greater heights depending on your tools. When flux is integrated into the process instead of being the end point, what pathways could that open up? And what if we add blood to the mix? Not just any blood, of course. My own wretched blood. Aren't you listening? I said there's too many missing. Sure, we were dying like mayflies, and mind you, some things are a bit hazy for me towards the end. But even so, they can't have all perished and they can't have all turned. I cannot be the only one. But where are they? That's what it always comes back to. No, they hardly know anything. Of course, it pains me to see them suffer. They're like little lost children huddled in their homes. But it's for the best. It's all for the best. We had all the knowledge in the world, and worlds beyond. And what good did it do us? No. Best leave them to it. Let them think of me as some mad old sorcerer and leave me in peace.
As Tobias had slinked back off to his cave, showing regret for involving the villagers in the whole tower project, his one last shot at bringing those lost souls back was seemingly to rely on time. Granted, he was also continuing to do some random sciencey stuff, as he mentions in his recordings initially, regarding rubedo and flux, substances which relate to the prima materia. At some point, though, Tobias realized there was good reason to believe that those who were lost were finally brought back through the hole he created, and he sent messages out through Charlemagne in the hopes that they'd be received in a location that he refers to as the Archive.
Forgive me my ramblings. I had lost all hope, honestly. It became nothing more than a goal to chase, to keep me sane over all these years. But here we are. And here you all are. Somewhere out there. The world's changed, but if the archives still stand and you're hearing this message, well, you must already know this. Come find me, my friends. There is much to discuss.
The question is, was Tobias's hunch right? He certainly seemed to believe that after however much time had passed, something finally changed. That's where we reach the present day, when the game actually takes place. Traders across the region begin to find some strange people showing up. Rather tall and usually with the skin the color of some shade of blue. And no, not that kind. These people were in fact the reborn humans that were lost in the Great Machine's awakening. Tobias was right. Knowing nothing of your past and being changed by the distortion of time, you and all your kin are known as... Tobias's ripping into the fabric of the world itself actually worked. Eventually, you, the player, one of the people who got trapped beyond time, who had presumably just been hanging out in the void all this time and been getting turned into a weird blue person, actually got sucked back into the world. And Wazam, you're here now. Welcome back. It's only been, like 500 years, which actually kind of implies that Tobias has in fact been alive for 500 years since he crawled out of that cave. Cool? Anyway, you lost your memory and you have no idea what's happening. So, like any reasonable person who's been transmuted by time itself, you start hitting rocks together and gathering sticks so you can make your cute little beginner tools. Aww. From there, you find clay, and with said clay, you sculpt crucibles for melting and pouring metal, vessels for the storage of items, and tool molds for tools. All before you can finally make a proper pickaxe to mine things. Perhaps you survive on your own, or you're joined by other Seraphim, which can be a good or a bad thing.
Where is the dry grass?
It's in the basement. You silly goober.
Oh.
Just don't take all of it, okay? Silly.
Well, I'm gonna take all of it.
I'm gonna eat you and your family.
I'll take half of it.
By the way, Seraph refers to the singular of your kind, and Seraphim refers to the plural. Before long, whether you're a lone wolf or a groupie, you'll start tanning hide and creating leather, discovering new types of ore.
Destroyed people, bro.
Dude, it's chalk!
Dude, close your fucking eyes.
We're breathing in the chalk, dude. Hunting animals, either out of desperation or because you just want to see the world burn. But one way or another, you survive. Or on the other hand, you die. But here's the thing, Seraphim don't die. Rather, they don't stay dead. You can respawn as a Seraph. You're a little ghostly running back to your stuff, but that weird glow eventually goes away and you're pretty much as good as new. One of the dangers you're likely to find in your path is in the form of the temporal rifts that summon enemies, or the outright storms that temporarily break the veil between this world and the Rust world. Which, by the way, you see that guy over there? That's Dave. Why is he Dave? I guess because some guy on Reddit decided it, so hi Dave. Ultimately, as the Giga Chat Seraph that you are, you may eventually find yourself conquering this world. And until the lore updates that they added somewhat recently, you were probably contending just fine knowing barely anything of the incredibly dark and depressing, but also kind of hopeful and inspiring stories that transpired before you woke up. But by the current version as of this video, 1.20.7, there's no better time than the present for your adventure to truly begin. As a warning, from here on out, there are major spoilers for the player's events of the game. If you're okay with that, then you should buckle your seatbelts, because it's time to start. Around the game world, you'll no doubt find some different traders that hang out in their little wagons scattered around the wilds. These people are a little shorter and more human looking than you, no offense. They'll trade you different items and they all have the same small world building lore dumps to share. All except for one. The treasure hunter type acts like a normal trader aside from his unique dialogue path. See, he knows how to find the first story location, but before he'll tell you, he wants you to get him a tin bronze pickaxe. What bro didn't tell you is that tin is about as hard to find in this world as vitamin B12 in a vegan, because goddamn, I searched far and wide and found nothing more than bear ass! We're gonna keep spamming space and then we're gonna like f***ing fly into a bear's asshole. Oh, bro! tin! But see, while I didn't actually find tin initially in my playthrough, I did end up finding another trader that sold a tin bronze pickaxe, so if all else fails, you can always go that route. Once you give the treasure hunter the pickaxe, he reveals a map to a place called the Resonance Archive. Archive, eh? Perhaps the same archive Tobias had mentioned, but you Seraphim don't quite know that yet. Nonetheless, if you're smart, you continue gathering materials and craft some good quality armor and weapons, because you should probably be prepared for this. Or you could be like us and sprint to the place at full speed with basic copper shit and some flint spears. Like, there's no way we die, right? Like, no way. We're far enough in the game at this point, like we got this.
It might not be that bad.
Once you arrive at the Resonance Archive, you'll notice that it seems to be on a mountain. Weird. Probably a consequence of the whole world being shifted around or whatever. Editor's note here, as it turns out, the Resonance Archives are not always on mountains. It just so happened that was our terrain generation specifically. But after you climb it, this is where the real fun begins. What is down here? What
There's
the hell?
noises I'm hearing that I don't want to hear right now.
Bro. This is some Elden Ring shit. Oh, I hear someone. Careful. Guys, shift. Oh, he fucking fell. After uncovering many scrolls, books, and records, and a decent couple enemies to introduce you to the hellish creatures that you'd come to face moving forward, you find yourself needing to solve a series of puzzles. Along the way, you might notice some abnormalities. What the f***? Look at the ceiling. It seems like in the process of the Great Machine awakening and rearranging the world through time, it caused entire pieces of the underground Resonance Archive to mirror or duplicate in a sense, which kind of just adds to the eerie yet fascinating aura of the whole place. After restoring power, you'll end up opening the door to the library. And, well... God. That seems like a fucking room of death. Yeah, this is like a trap room where you fucking die.
What is that in the middle, dude?
Oh! Oh! Dude. Oh! I'm fucking dead. So, we died a lot to this weird, damaged Eidolon. But after sacrificing ourselves again and again and losing a good 15% of our stuff in the chaos, we actually managed to take the creature down. Not long after defeating it, you discover this incredible library, the archive itself. See, the overall dungeon structure of this entire thing was a kind of underground outpost, one of many, but this one in particular just so happened to be where all of that society's knowledge was stored, protected from the rot for as long as possible. You can discover tons of notes here, which by the way, you need to right-click on these bookshelves to actually grab, and even a recording playback device that lets you decipher some early and late recordings, but also Tobias's messages to you, the Seraph.
The world has shifted since the old days, and I have yet to find where the archives now lay. I cannot give you a direct path, but I will have maps delivered to some familiar places. If you can find your way to, Nadia, the Spoils, Lazaret, Cardinals, or perhaps Quiet, you will find further directions. If you do not know these lands, well, I suppose try asking one of the more adventurous sorts around you. Perhaps someone can provide some assistance. I pray your journey is a short one. Only a couple of decades.
Okay, buddy, yeah, sure. Only a couple decades. You know, not everyone can seemingly live for 500 years like you can, for some reason. I still don't know what the hell to make of that. Anyway, after you leave the archives, this is where your adventure truly starts, because once you make it back to the treasure hunter trader, you get some new dialogue options where you can ask about the various locations Tobias had mentioned in his recording, like Nadia, the Spoils, the Lazaret, Cardinals, and Quiet. Most of these, the trader has no idea, but when you mention the Lazaret, he actually says he knows where it is, but that it's quite far away. He of course swoops in to then offer to give you an elk to aid in your journey in exchange for 100 rusty gears, which is a lot, okay? Or, on the other hand, you could offer him some ancient artifact relic you found in the archives, which will prompt him to sweeten the deal a little, lowering the elk cost to about 50 gears instead. But before you buy it, you need to craft a saddle and bridle for it. So tons of rather convoluted but also kind of cool leather tanning later, and you should eventually have a decent amount to craft the damn equipment. Once you're finally ready, he gives you your elk. Now let me pause here and just give you some advice. Put a damn medallion on this thing's head and tame it if possible, because it seems like putting a saddle and bridle on it doesn't actually make it care about you, for a reason that you'll see very soon. Though, honestly, even if it had a name and everything and technically belonged to you, I don't really know if what happened between me and this fucking elk would have gone any differently. We headed over to the 12,000 blocks away that the lazaret was supposedly located at to the east, and eventually I reached a mountain. I was trying to go around it because riding an elk up a mountain sounds like a disaster waiting to happen, but I just kept finding more mountain, so I said, fuck it, and just started climbing. Eventually some leaves were getting in the way, and since I happened to have some shears, I started snipping. But while riding my elk, I somehow accidentally hit it twice, and after everything we had been through, albeit just a measly 10,000 blocks, it tried to fucking off me on this mountain, and then it despawned in front of my eyes. What the fuck, game? Very salty and upset, I begrudgingly walked the rest of the way to the lazaret, figuring I was so far away from home at this point that I'd probably never make it back alive. So I considered this a one-way journey to hell, and eventually reached the place. And holy shit, Tobias was not joking. This lazaret basically is hell. Not exactly a great place to be rotting away. After slaying the monsters like an absolute giga chad, not even taking a single hit of damage, you eventually find a letter on a skeleton that tells you of a new location and encourages you to go to it. In my case, this one was 26,000 blocks out. Oh joy. By the way, if you're just getting into the game, I encourage you to set the story distance world setting thing to like 75 to 50%, because that'll decrease the humongous distance between story locations. Anyways, as I just kept on running, a good hour or two later, I settled upon something that genuinely surprised me. Holy shit. No way. I found a city. Remember Nadia, the town Tobias had founded? Well, it's actually here. You get to journey to it, and there's NPCs everywhere. It's a lively village, showing rich history with the destroyed outskirts that display just how much damage they sustained in their time fighting against the rusty metallic hordes of creatures over the years. Speaking of the NPCs, you'll find one that has a letter for you that tells you of one more location to reach. So after staying as long as you wish, you eventually make the next journey, and this is when you'll find a cave. Now, what I'm about to show you is probably the most horrific thing you could ever witness. Worse than the rust creatures or even the rot. I mean, this is basically a war crime. Look, in my defense, I did not know that Charlemagne was a character at this point, okay? It was just this small little bell that I figured was like every other bell in the game, and up until this point, the larger variants had basically given me PTSD.
The block.
Okay, fuck!
Go, get the one block. Okay, we broke it. Okay, get in. Fuck!
So when I found Charlemagne, I fucking killed him. I'm so sorry. He'll probably respawn. I hope. Bro was just trying to get inside the cave and go say hi to Tobias. Probably. Fuck. I'm a monster.
The fucking bell. I hate bells. What the hell is that thing? Oh, it's so gross. Kill it.
After I made my way into Tobias's lab, and after definitely not telling him that I just fucking murdered Charlemagne, Tobias is here in the flesh. At least partially.
I don't take visitors. Why do you think I live in this waterlogged hole in that God's bones? You're actually here, and you look different. I suppose some changes should be expected.
As it turns out, he recognizes you, but before he lore dumps too much, he needs you to do something for him, like, as soon as possible.
Listen, it's good you're here, but it's vitally important that we have the lens if this new world is going to continue. I would retrieve it myself, but as you can see, there is simply no way I could manage the task. I'm sorry, friend, but this must be done.
Tobias tasks you with one more location to travel to. No surprise, he needs the lens, which was left on top of the tower in the horrid biome that seeped through all those years before, the devastation. He also warns you of his old mechanical beast he had built to assist the tower's construction back in the day. In its time, it was an ally, but after the devastation came through, it twisted the bird into something unrecognizable. So Tobias gives you the map and sends you on your way. Eventually, after traveling far enough, you reach it, the devastation. Atop the tower ahead rests that most important tool. The lens would give you and Tobias the upper hand, just as it had when he used it atop the tower to bring you back to this world. And just as he relied on you then to show up, your retrieval of this item would mean everything. Side note, this place is fucking horrifying.
What the hell is this place? Dude, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not ready. What was that? What was that? No, no.
As my copper weapons were long gone, I wielded my mighty flint spears into battle, rushing to the tower as fast as I could. And after reaching it, a curious message appeared on my screen.
What?
So I guess like
What?
spirits exist.
Dude, I just pressed Y and it just switched the... What? I'm in like a different world. Dude, this is insane.
So as it turns out, you have an unexpected ability as a Seraph. You can go back in time at key locations, the tower being one of them. I expect this ability will be used later on in the future story updates for the game, and it is truly an awesome mechanic. The reason you're able to do this may be attributed to the fact that the Seraphim spent so much time in the void, presumably lost beyond time itself, way back when. So it's likely they can easily shift between periods in the presence of high temporal instability, which the tower is most definitely contaminated with. As you climb the tower, you might just notice a certain health bar. Oh, fuck. Ender Dragon? On the tippy top, this is where you face the most difficult boss thus far, the Mad Crow. This dude happens to be the mechanical bird that Tobias had mentioned, and, well, it really doesn't like you poking around the tower. Before you grab the lens, you have to weaken it till it has about 2/3 of its health bar left, at which point it leaves you alone. And with that, you finally grab the lens and journey on back to Tobias, only mildly traumatized from the whole experience. Oh, by the way, if you're even thinking about attempting this mission, you're gonna need a whole lot more than flint spears. Believe me. I definitely did not turn on creative mode, by the way. Once you get back to Tobias with the lens, he's willing to give you a bunch more information about the item itself, the devastation, Nadia, the Lazaret, and you, the Seraph. And most of all, he explains why all of this is so important. The rot, he believes, is coming back. One day it'll inevitably worm its way back into this world, and that is why Tobias needs your help moving forward. So, what happens next, you ask him?
I'll need some time to figure out how to integrate the lens here. It shouldn't take more than a decade or two.
Oh, Tobias, come on.
All right. Maybe less, we'll see. Natural philosophy is a delicate process, you know. You'd be surprised how much work goes into making new bits and bobs. In the meantime, here's something for your efforts.
Tobias hands you the schematic for a translocator, a teleportation device that you can build and place elsewhere to then travel back to his laboratory at any time. And with that, the story concludes, except not, because Vintage Story is nowhere near complete. The official roadmap for the game mentions more story-rich game content and roughly 8 story chapters, which, if we include the ones we just played through as the first 2, that means there are 6 more ahead. Vintage Story has so much amazing content to look forward to in the future, and this video only focused on really the main stuff. What makes the world building and lore so special to me is how many extra stories there are buried in the notes, stories which I didn't even mention in this video because they're simply autobiographical accounts and folklore created by often the common people of the world, both the old world and the new. Where the overall story goes from here is yet to be seen, but if I had to guess, it's probably going to take advantage of more time travel, and perhaps we'll even witness Jonas Falks' return. Maybe he's even a Seraph himself. Most importantly though, what do you guys think about Vintage Story? Let me know in the comments below. What are your burning questions? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for watching, everyone. Tobias here, or what's left of me anyway. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and click the little bell button if you want to be notified every time they release a new video. If you don't, I might lose another body part. Oh, there goes a finger. Quick, subscribe before I lose any more. This is at the very end of the audio if you're hearing this. Baba booey, baba booey, baba booey, baba.